In a recent video I did, I bought some Dragonstone, and today I'm going to take that Dragonstone and I'm going to build an aquascape. If you missed that video, I'm going to leave a link here as well as the link in the description below. In that video you can check out a little bit more closely what I got, because I'm not going to be using all my Dragonstone in the aquascape today. And if you want to see more about what came in the box that I got and want to be able to know where to buy your own, you can check out that video there. Now, usually when you're setting up a fish tank, you actually want to start with what fish you're going to get. And in this video, I'm actually starting with the exact opposite. I started with the rocks that I wanted, and I'm going to be building my aquascape around the rocks that I got. So the first thing is I have Dragonstone, and I have to decide which substrate I'm going to use. And I debated going back and forth between a sand substrate or some red fluorite substrate, and in the end I decided to go with the sand substrate. I use pool filter sand, which you have to rinse really well before you put it in your aquarium. So once I rinsed this, I went ahead and I dumped it right on into my fish tank, and then I went and I spread. Now when you're spreading out your substrate, you want to make sure it's a little more shallow in the front and deeper in the back, and this helps add depth to your aquarium aquascape. But now that I have my substrate all set up and ready to go, now it's time for me to start thinking about placing the rocks. Now, there's lots of different rules for aquascaping and lots of different rules for art in general, and I am by no means an artist when it comes to this, but some of the things that I did try to keep in mind are the rule of thirds, and that's basically the idea of when you set up and you look at your tank, you cut it into thirds, both sideways and then, up and down. And where those connection points come is a focal point that draws your eye. And so as I was building my aquascape here, you're going to see I'm trying to keep that into that third and kind of make that my focal point. So I'm going to go ahead and show you as I build it. Now, before I put it in the tank, I am going to end up building it and setting it up so that I have a pretty good idea of what I want it to look like prior, and then I'll show you in the tank what it's going to look like. So I decided to add a little bit of sand here. And the reason I did that is because this is where I'm going to build that up so that I can have my focal point here. This is going to be that top third, and you'll see at the end what it's going to look like. But again, I had to keep moving some things around here because it's not going to work out quite the way you want the first time around. And you'll have to start adjusting rocks and moving things and moving your aquascape pieces around. And this part is just building your hardscape. So you can see I had to keep adding some sand in there to really help fill in some gaps and really make it look a little bit more natural. I love using paintbrushes to really move some substrate around when I'm doing my tanks and setting them up. And if you haven't used a paintbrush with your fish tanks, it's definitely something that's very helpful. So I'm adding more sand here, just trying to help build up those sections, make it look a little bit more natural, and clean off some of those crevices and nooks and crannies that the sand fell into. At this point, I realized my focal point was not really where I wanted it to be. I just found it wasn't quite high enough, and so I was trying to do a couple different things, and in the end I decided just to add some more sand here and go ahead and replace that rock and just sit it up a little bit higher. Here's a bit of a closer look of the hardscape setup, and I really like the way this came out. I think it's a really good foundation to build on. If you guys are enjoying this video, go ahead and do me a favor and hit that like button. Now, I don't want to go out and spend a whole lot of money on plants, but I do want to add some plants to this tank. And I think what's really going to look good is if I have some Anubias Nana Petite. It's a really small plant. I think it's going to grow really well in with these rocks. Anubias likes to grow on rocks and wood, and so I think that's going to be a good plant. So before I plant, I want to make sure that I fill up the tank and empty it again. This is going to help my rocks get the water they need, get wet again, but it's also going to help make sure if there's any particles that are going to be floating, or if there's any stuff that maybe I didn't rinse well enough with the sand, I can get that rinsed out well. So I'm going to fill it up, and then I'm going to drain the tank right back down so that I can get it planted. So now it's time for me to start planting. And the nice thing about having these plants and using the Dragonstones, there's all kinds of little nooks and crannies within the stones that I can go ahead and slide these plants into. And for the most part, they should be able to stay on the rocks and in the little crannies of the rocks without having to do a whole lot of work. So I have all my plants planted. Now it's time to go ahead and fill the tank back up. So I've got my plants all planted, and you probably saw one of those plants end up floating up to the top, so I'll take care of that later and get that replanted. But let me know what you think about this. Now, the last part of setting up this tank that I have to do is I have to decide which fish, and I'm hoping you guys can help me out with that. So in a tank like this, I really was keeping it, and I wanted to keep the plants small, and I want to keep the fish pretty small here too. So I'm really looking at a nano fish, and keeping in mind that some of these rocks are a little bit sharper, I want to keep the fish to be short-finned nano fish. So I don't really have an idea of which ones I want to go with at this point, so I'm hoping you guys can help me out. If you have a good idea for what I can put in this aquascape, go ahead, leave me a comment below and give me an idea. What do you think would look good in here? Let's take one last look here at this. And you can see now that the water has cleared up a bit and we got rid of some of the bubbles, just how nice those plants look in contrast with those rocks. And I think as these plants grow in, it's really going to end up being beautiful. You know, and just have an absolutely gorgeous look. And I think we have, you know, that rule of thirds that we followed. I think we have that our eyes are drawn where I want them, right here with these plants and with this rock. And I'm happy with the way this turned out. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you go ahead and click this video right here. Thanks for watching.